Today we're going to talk about a Seizonjutsu or survival technique, right? So as you guys all know, Seizonjutsu is the ancient art of survival. So in the age of the ninja and samurai, Seizonjutsu were the basic survival skills that you needed to get from point A to point B, right? So they didn't have cars and automobiles and trains and easy transportation, especially if you're going to be a ninja or a shinobi or a minomi, a scout, and you had to get from point A to point B. You might not always want to walk on the beaten path. Not always going through town is the right answer. Sometimes you're going to want to be able to, get off the beaten path and kind of be ninja, right? Conceal your identity, stay away from everything, and do everything in stealth. So to do that, you'd have to have a hell of a lot of survival skills. And that's one thing that I think a lot of ninjutsu schools kind of overlook. What we have is we have a set of survival skills, and we practice those skills within your martial arts. We learn those skills, and just like anything else within our school, we also have modern variations. So, okay, if this is the way they created fire, how can we create fire using a modern implement? If this is the way that they, found water, how can we find water using modern implements? You catch me with that? All right, so today, in this particular video, I want to talk to you guys about the rule of three. And this is something that is a very modern concept, but it's something that I think everyone tends to need to know, right? There are four rules. I know I've heard this to where there's 3 rules of 3. I've heard this 2 different ways. There are 3 rules of 3, and then there are 4 rules of 3. And even then I've heard multiple different variations of the rule of 3. So even if you guys Google rule of 3 survival, right, you might catch something slightly different than what I'm going to tell you. I will say that I've even found different ones. Right? But I'm going to give it to you guys the way that I learned it, okay? And then that can start that process of you guys doing research and training, okay? So what that means is there are 4 things that you can't go without, okay? Number 1, you can't go 3 minutes without air. I think we all know that, right? So if you're ever in a situation where you can't fucking breathe, you cannot go 3 minutes without air. Number 2, you cannot go 3 hours without shelter. Now this is where it gets slightly, we got to put a footnote to that, because I think we can all agree we can go outside for 3 hours and none of us are going to die, okay? When the rule says you can't go 3 hours without shelter, what that means is you can't go 3 hours without regulated body temperature. The number 1 killer in a survival situation, the 2 main killers is going to be either hyperthermia or hypothermia. Okay, so you're either going to be too hot, so you die, or you're going to be too cold, so you die. So when it says you cannot go 3 hours without shelter, as one of these basic rules of 3 here, what that means is you can't go 3 hours with an unregulated body temperature. You have to shelter yourself from the elements, or you have to have something in your body to help regulate your temperature. As you guys all know, that's going to be water. Water is going to be key. If you have water in your system, water is what's going to help you regulate your body temperature, right? So there's that. The next rule of 3 is you cannot go 3 days without water. And the last 2 are the ones I think everyone knows. You can't go 3 days without water, and you can't go 3 weeks without food, right? So, and those are the 2 that always tend to come up. The other 2, no one really talks about that much. And I think it's because you have to put a little bit of a footnote, or you got to give a little bit of information behind it, right? But if you're ever in a situation where you're off grid or wherever, you're in the middle of nowhere, you're going to be surviving, you've got to, focus on where you're at. Always remember those 4 things. You can't go 3 minutes without air. You cannot go 3 hours with unregulated body temperature. So 3 hours without shelter. You cannot go 3 days without water. And you cannot go 3 weeks without food. Right? You guys got that written down? Mm-hmm. All right.